Hello, dear students. Yeah, this is a testing class of how a video recording can be done. So, today I'll just take a small topic on the nervous system and neurons. Okay, so as a prerequisite to studying neurotransmitters, I would like to give you a small introduction about nervous system. Okay, so what does the nervous system do? This is basically something that we have done in our plus two and things like that. So the nervous system coordinates the activities of muscles, organs, senses, and action. So the nervous system is made up of a nervous tissue, and basically it receives sensory input, it integrates that, and after that, on the basis of the sensory input, it dictates the motor output. So each of these three can be considered as a independent function. So first is based on the external environment, it receives a sensory input. Then the brain itself integrates this and a decision making process is being done. And after that, the corresponding motor output is dictated. So this is the role of the nervous system. And the most important aspect of the nervous system is the presence of neurons. Okay, so neurons are the basic building blocks of the nervous system. They are also called nerve cells. And when they are in group, they are bundles, they are called nerves. Okay, so neurons, which are also called nerve cells, they send and receive signals from your brain. While these neurons have so many common features with other types of cells, they are structurally and functionally unique. You can see the structure of a neuron. Okay, so you have specialized projections, which is called axons. I think I'll show you a better picture. Yeah, so this picture would be better. So you have, when you look at the structure, you have specialized projections, which are called the axons. Okay, and these allow the neurons to transmit electrical and chemical signal to other cells. So basically the mode of transmission of the signal is either electrical or chemical signals. So these neurons can also receive these signals by something called as a dendrite. Okay, these are like root-like extensions that you can see. Okay, so neurons can receive signals through these extensions called dendrites. And at the birth, like human brain has around 100 billion neurons. That is debatable, but still, 100 billion neurons at the time of birth itself. So you can imagine the distance that the neurons cover in the human body. And one more special feature of the neuron is that these cells cannot reproduce or they do not regenerate also. They are arrested in that G0 phase of the cell cycle. Okay, uh, they cannot be replaced unless you die. And you can create new nerve cells, which is called neurogenesis. It's not much understood again. You know that there are we have many neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, and so we have to gain insights through research into these neurodegenerative diseases. Anyway, when you examine the parts of a neuron, the neurons vary in size, shape, and structure. And all neurons have essentially three parts, which is the cell body and axon. Like I have been telling you, the axon, the cell body part of it, and the dendrites. Okay, so the dendrites, the cell body, and the axon. Okay, and inside the cell body, you have the nucleus and the large nucleolus as well. The cell body is also called soma. Okay, and that is the core of the neuron. The cell body carries the genetic information, it maintains the structure of the neuron, and provides energy for the activities of the cell. Like other cell bodies only, you have these nucleus and specialized organelles in the cell body. So you can see the diversity of the structure of the cell. So our normal understanding, we have seen the general eukaryotic cell. The RBC is quite different. It's diverse. The squamous epithelial cell is different. the neurons are also different. Okay, so this is enclosed by a membrane as well. Like normal cells, you have the membrane, and it protects and allows it to interact with the immediate surroundings. Okay, so what is an axon? An axon is a long, it's like a tall structure, tail-like structure. You can see it's like a tail, and it joins the cell body at a special junction, which is called the axon hillock. Okay, and you can see the axons are insulated with fatty substance, which is our myelin, which is also a protein also associated. It's actually a combination of all the biomolecules, and it is actually these myelinated axons which help in the conduction of an electrical signal. Okay, so these neurons generally have one main axon. Yeah, and what are dendrites? I just told you earlier. Dendrites are fibrous roots. Okay, that branch out from the cell body. These dendrites receive and process signals from the axons of other neurons. So it's like a big network. So many neurons will be assisted together, and neurons can have more than one set of dendrites. Okay, in this picture, it's just one. You can see prominently there are more than one set of dendrites. Sometimes they give rise to tree-like structures. Okay, you must have. Do you remember Purkinje cells? Are the name? I still remember that name. These are Purkinje cells are found in the cerebellum, and the function of the neurons is the neurons send signals using action potentials. What is an action potential? An action potential is a shift in the neuron's electrical potential, which is caused by the flow of ions in and out of the neural membrane. Okay, so these things I have already told. Okay, so axons end in axon terminals. So inside the axon terminals, they contain vesicles with neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are the messages that are coming from the axon terminal. And axon terminals are separated from the next neuron by a gap, and the junction between the two axon terminals are called synapses. Okay, so and synaptic cleft is the gap between the axon terminals. I should be telling this, and then only I should be going to what are action potentials, what is a chemical and electrical mode of transmission. Okay, so axons end in axon terminals. Axon terminals contain vesicles with neurotransmitters, and the junction between the two axon terminals, or the junction between two nerve cells, is called a synapse, and there's a small space that is called the synaptic cleft. Okay, this is the picture. Okay, you have one ending of an axon here, and you have in the next nerve cell. So there are synaptic vesicles which are located in the junction, and this actually has the neurotransmitters, and the neurotransmitters are triggered and the chemical messages are delivered through chemical mode of transmission and electrical mode of transmission to the next cell. Okay, so like I told you, there's a network of neurons that are there in nervous system. Now let me tell you what is a chemical synapse, okay, or what is an action potential. So basically an action potential is the change in state of the nerve cell which causes a trigger in chemical and electrical synapses. So in a chemical synapse, the action potential is like a drive that affect the other neurons. Okay, so one neuron, next neuron. In a chemical synapse, an action potential affect other neuron in this gap called the synapse, and which consists of a presynaptic ending, that is called from the presynaptic membrane, and a synaptic cleft. Okay, and a synaptic cleft and a postsynaptic ending. So when an action potential is generated, it is carried along the axon to the presynaptic ending, and from there it triggers the release of chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. That is what we have to study. So that action potential triggers chemical messengers called neurotransmitters, and these neurotransmitters cross the synaptic cleft and bind to receptors in the postsynaptic ending of a dendrite. Okay, let me tell once again. The action potential triggers the release of neurotransmitters which cross the synaptic cleft and bind to the receptors in the postsynaptic ending of the dendrite. So these neurotransmitters normally excite the postsynaptic neuron, causing this particular nerve cell or neuron to generate an action potential of its own. Okay. Also, it can do one more thing. It can inhibit the postsynaptic neuron, and as a result of that, there is no action potential. So, രണ്ട് വശത്തും ഉള്ള കാര്യങ്ങൾ. Okay. So that is the case with chemical synapse. ഇത് കൂടാതെ വേറൊരു സംഭവം കൂടി ഉണ്ട്, which is electrical synapse. Electrical synapses can only excite. This occurs when two neurons are connected through a gap junction. This gap is much smaller than a synapse, and it's like the cell membrane is directly involved, which forces ion channels to transmit a positive electrical signal. So as a result of that, electrical synapses are much faster than chemical synapses. So only in case of chemical synapses, we have to take into account the neurotransmitters. Okay, so this is how the signal diminishes from one neuron to the next, and that's how this takes place. There are also different types of neurons, which actually you don't have to learn, but still I'll tell you that actually neurons, like, see, synapses, it can have the ones with other nerve cells. Then you have sensory neurons, which help you to taste, smell, hear, see, feel, etc. So sensory neurons are triggered by physical and chemical inputs from the environment, like sound, touch, heat, light, etc. Okay, and smell and taste are chemical inputs. Okay, then for example, when we step on something hot, or when we keep our hands on something hot, it activates the sensory neurons. These neurons send a message to the brain, and that makes you aware of the heat or whatever you did. Then we also have a motor neuron. I'm telling you about the classification of neurons. So sensory neuron associated with taste, smell, hear, what you see, feelings, etc. Then motor neurons, MOTOR. Motor neurons play a role in movement, which include voluntary and involuntary movements. Okay, that the brain, spinal cord communicates with the muscles, organs, etc. You can see the neuromuscular synapses are there, neuroglandular synapses are there, synapses with other neuron are there, etc. So for example, when you eat, your motor neurons in the spinal cord send signals to the muscles in your stomach. Muscles contract. As a result of that, your digestive tract is activated, etc. So basically, motor neurons help in the communication with muscles, organs, glands, etc. Okay, so I think that's it. Basic information about the nerve cell. Yeah, this is what I was telling. This would be a better picture. In this, you can see the electrical impulses which travel from one neuron to the another across a tiny junction, which is called the synapse. The same thing. And then action potential reaches the and there is the release of neurotransmitter molecules from sacs called vesicles. And these molecules cross the synaptic band and bind to sites. Okay. As a result of that, the sending neuron normally reabsorbs the excess neurotransmitter molecules, and that's okay. That is reuptake of the neurotransmitters. And these are some of the neurotransmitters which we will have to see in detail. What are the functions of these neurotransmitters? Some of the important neurotransmitters are acetylcholine, dopamine, okay, serotonin, norepinephrine, okay, gamma aminobutyric acid, glutamate, etc. So most of the functions are carried out by these neurotransmitters, and most of our activities are triggered by these neurotransmitters. So that we can see in the next presentation. Thank you.